Big problem, big challenge everywhere I go is relationships. And I do workshops on relationships. And even when I do workshops on relationships, relationships are still a big challenge because we're all different. We think differently. We don't understand one another always, or we don't even want to understand one another. We just want to explain how we're thinking, how we're feeling, and we just want other people to acknowledge that and kind of just submit to that. It's ingrained in nature. We all have that to one degree or another. As we've discussed before, Prabhupada said he couldn't spread Krishna consciousness alone. He needed the help of his disciples. And if his disciples fight, if they don't get along, then his work will be stopped because his work goes through his disciples. Now, when we look at the world today, it's really bad, and it's getting worse. And innocent people are constantly being exploited, constantly being cheated by politicians, by corporations. It's rampant. We know that, we see that, and we want to help people as the best we can. The better we get along, the better our movement will be. The better our movement will be, the more we provide shelter for people who need shelter from the onslaughts of the material world. One of my godbrothers, Krishnadas, he was saying that sometimes when people ask him, what is the Hare Krishna mantra? He said it's spiritual self-defense. It's defending yourself from the onslaughts of the toxicity of the material world. So these onslaughts are affecting everyone. We know that. We've been through it. We're still dealing with it ourselves, but at least we have knowledge. If we are to be effective as possible, relationships amongst Vaishnavas is extremely important to focus on. So what are the challenges? The challenge is my way or the highway. I'm right, you're wrong. I don't agree with you. Another challenge is I don't even like you, and because I don't like you, I don't want to hear from you. Or you're a younger devotee. What do you know? Or you're of this gender, or you're of this ethnicity. What do you know? These prejudices are built in. We have to admit that. We're conditioned souls. These things get in the way of relationships. And as relationships are hampered, there are often problems in the movement, and often factions follow, because I'm siding with this devotee, you're siding with that devotee. And it's been a challenge, definitely a challenge for us to be respectful of those we don't agree with, to be able to speak well even of those we don't agree with. And as I think about this and I teach this, one of the things that I think becomes obvious is this is a big irony for us as devotees, as Vaishnavas, because we're teaching a philosophy of unity, a house in which the whole world can live. We're teaching a philosophy of humility, of empathy, compassion, kindness, integrity, and we're supposed to be living it. And then we find that we're extremely challenged with relationships amongst devotees. We're challenged with relationships amongst devotees who have left ISKCON. For whatever reason, we disagree with them or they disagree with us. That can create friction. It can create criticism. It can create an inability to get along well, even from a distance, what to speak of within our society where it's absolutely necessary to get along. So if you're in a situation in a particular project or temple, and there's friction, or you're having difficulty getting along, or someone is doing something which is making it difficult for you, in the service of Prabhupada, I would humbly request, do whatever you can to get along, because this is what is going to make us powerful. This is what is fundamentally needed for us to be successful. And this is what we need to pass on. And this last thought I just want to give you is passing on. Ask yourself, if you act the way you're acting for the rest of your life, is this something you want to pass on? I hope the answer is yes, that I'm acting in a way that I set a good example and I would like to pass this on. But if the answer is not with everything I do, I don't want to pass this on, it's not a good example, then ask yourself, well, what is the example you want to pass on? What do you want to leave to the next generation? So you may be young and you're not thinking of the next generation, but imagine it's 30, 40 years from now, your legacy is there. What are you passing on in terms of how you dealt with devotees in your local project? What example did you set? Because this, knowingly or unknowingly, we pass this on because people after you will say, well, this is what he did. Or they'll be dealing with an institution that's divided along certain lines, which we created. So that's a very, very heavy thing to meditate on. We want to leave something more unified. We want to leave a legacy of how we were able to get along, how we were able to solve differences. Isn't it? Isn't that what we want to do? I wouldn't say that's what we want to do more. I would say that's what we must do. And so when we're dealing with, I don't agree with you, I don't like you, etc., what do you know? I'm smarter. We have to think, what will please Prabhupada? And obviously that will not please Prabhupada. And what will we leave? What legacy, what example, what culture will we leave for the next generation? Now, we're conditioned souls, and so we have a tendency to act under the influence of the modes of nature if we're not careful. And sometimes in relationships, we act under those influences, and the relationships become very dysfunctional, disharmonious, etc. And we create factions and sides opposed to one another in very nasty ways or unkind ways, even as devotees. And we want to avoid this at all costs. And we want to set example for the future of devotees that even though maybe we don't agree on everything, we learned how to get along. We learned how to respect those we didn't agree with. We learned how to listen to those we didn't agree with. And we learned how to work together to come up with solutions that would take into consideration everyone's thoughts, attitudes, and feelings. Hare Krishna.